Next on 1st and 16, we got the national championship game tonight. Who's going to win? And does it really matter for the Big 12? We're going to talk about why Indiana and why Miami could actually be a good thing for the Big 12 conference. Also, Big 12 is kind of dominating the AP Top 25 in basketball. We're going to go over all the rankings on today's show. Hello, welcome to today's episode. Like I mentioned, my name is Adam Gibby. We are live on YouTube. We have video. We have finally made it. I want to apologize to everybody for the last couple of weeks that we haven't really had the show. There's been a lot going on in my life. I've kind of briefly discussed it here and there on the few episodes we have had, but a lot's been going on. Had my baby boy, Brigham. He was born about a month ago. Then obviously the whole Christmas, New Year, holiday season was crazy. And then, as you can see, we got a studio here now. Now, there's not a lot of decorations. There's not a lot going on quite yet, but that is going to change. I am getting stuff from different groups, from different people. This, for an example, this hat and this hoodie, I also got a flag, came from the Iowa State bookstore. Want to thank them. Huge shout out to them. Also got this football from the University of Houston bookstore. So if you want to see your stuff in the studio, if you want me to show it off for the world, I will shout it out. I will present it. I will promote it here on the show. So just reach out. You can do that by just reaching out to me on X. That's probably the easiest way to do it. It's at 1st and 16 _ pod. You can see it here in the bottom left corner of your screen. And again, just reach out and we can have that conversation. Or if you just want to get in touch with the show, we're going to be doing a lot of interviews. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right, let's get right into the national championship tonight. Indiana versus Miami. Who should win? Doesn't really matter for the Big 12. Now, I'm not going to do the whole hypothetical or the transitive win of, well, Miami lost to this team, who lost to this team, who lost to SMU, who lost to TCU. Therefore, if TCU would have been in the same situation, they could have been a national champion because TCU would have beaten Miami. No, I'm not going to do that. That's not really my style. I'll go as far to say, if this team beat this team, sure, whatever. But I'm not going to go 4 or 5 layers to try to give you an excuse as to why the Big 12 actually wins out of this. Here's the reality. If we're really looking at it, the Big 12 isn't really going to be helped out all that much, regardless of what happens tonight. They're just not. But there is still a case to be said for Miami as well as for Indiana as to why it may actually be a slight good thing for the conference. Here's why. Let's start off with Miami. The Big Ten and the SEC, we know, have been driving college football. They have been the ones that have just been nonstop saying, hey, we need to just go to a Power 2. We've got all the talent. We get all the stars. We have all the recruits. We get all the transfers. We have all the money. Fox is with the Big Ten. The SEC is with ESPN. The Big 12, the ACC, all these other conferences kind of have to piece together their TV contracts, whereas the Big Ten and SEC are able just to sit back, relax, and know that, hey, Fox has us or ESPN has them. So what would happen if Miami wins? Now, all of a sudden, that dominance of the Big Ten, that dominance of the SEC isn't quite as strong as the perceived strength actually is. Because you would have a non-Big Ten, non-SEC school win a national championship. Now you can't ignore the ACC. And by not ignoring the ACC, at the same time, you can't really ignore the Big 12. Because let's be honest, the Big 12 and the ACC are essentially the same thing as the Big Ten and the SEC. They're kind of travel partners, if you will. You can't have the ACC without the Big 12. You can't really have the Big 12 without the ACC. And I've talked about that a ton on how we want the ACC to dissolve. We need the ACC to sort of be our travel buddy. When things go one way or another, we need the ACC to back us up, and we need to be able to back up the ACC as well. And so if Miami wins, that's a good look for the non-Power 2. That's a great look. Here's the case for Indiana, though, and this was where it gets a little bit more interesting. The very weird kind of, with Indiana, the very weird kind of situation where it can help the Big 12 is that Indiana is the underdog story. They're the team that until this year was the most losing team of all time in the Power Four. So you take every team in the Big 12, ACC, Big 10, or SEC, and you say, okay, who has been the worst team historically? It's Indiana. And so if Indiana can win a national championship, and not only win a national championship, but go 16-0, be the first team since, I believe, the 1800s when I don't remember the team on the top of my head. It may have been Harvard or Princeton or something. They went 16-0 over 100 years ago. Nobody has done that ever since. Now, granted, a lot of teams haven't had that opportunity because we didn't have the expanded playoff, but the point is still the same. Indiana is 16-0 if they win this game. So if you're Indiana and you can do that, why not Oklahoma State? Why not TCU? Why not BYU? Could Utah do it? UCF, Cincinnati, West Virginia? I don't see why not. Because remember, Indiana is coming from a lower place than any of those teams. Historically, there's never been a team as bad as Indiana. And in 3 years, they've been able to completely flip the switch. Really, 2 years. They've been able to completely flip the switch to winning potentially a national championship and finishing 16-0. So as you're looking at Oklahoma State, who's bringing over the entire roster from North Texas, as you're looking at an Iowa State, who just lost everybody to Penn State, as you're looking at a BYU, who has been on the doorstep of the college football playoff for 2 straight seasons, or Texas Tech, who actually made it this year, why can't they be the next Indiana? And I think that if Indiana wins, it shows that any team can do this. And in a way, if, let's say next year, a Texas Tech or a BYU or a Utah or whoever it is able to break through and win a national championship or even make the championship, that once again shows parity within college football. It once again shows that you can't just have these blue bloods, the Alabama, the Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State. You can't just prop those teams up and expect them to win every single year because you now have NIL, you now have the transfer portal. So you can get a team like Indiana, a team like BYU, a team like UCF to rise up from really nowhere and become national champions or become at least contenders. So that's why it would be good for Indiana to win. So between the two, Indiana or Miami, which one helps the Big 12? I have an answer. I think that they both marginally could help the Big 12. I don't think either really hurt. And that's great news. The worst case scenario would have been, an Ohio State versus Alabama or a Georgia versus Oregon. We did not want a Big 10 versus SEC game. We also didn't want a Big 10 versus Big 10 or SEC versus SEC. That would have been a terrible situation for the Big 12 because then it would have further pushed some narratives that are just going to further divide the P2 and the next two. SEC and the Big 10 from the ACC, the Big 12, and especially the rest of college football. So like I said, it doesn't really matter. I think they're both good, so just root on the team you want. I would personally say I think Indiana's going to win this game. I've watched enough Indiana football. The way that they are committed to their craft, the way that they are able to just dominate both sides of the ball, quite honestly, what they kind of remind me of is like a ChatGPT team. If you're going to ChatGPT and ask AI, create the perfect college football team, but you cannot use any 5 stars. You only get a handful of 4 stars. I think you get Indiana. You listen to Fernando Mendoza when he gives his interviews. He sounds very AI. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's actually kind of a compliment. You want to be able to run a program. You want to have players who are so locked in that when people talk to them and when you watch them, it almost looks robotic. It almost looks like this has been practiced to perfection. The discipline, whatever it is, it looks great. And that's what you want if you are Indiana. That is what you want if you're an Indiana fan. So I think Indiana's going to win this game. I have the final score being 35-17. I don't think Miami's going to be all that competitive really in the second half. I think early on, Miami does have a great defense. I think they might get a turnover. Things might be a little bit off, just off for Indiana's offense at the beginning. But I do think that in the end, Indiana is going to pull away and we're going to have a 2-3 score kind of game. So that's my prediction, 35-17. Now, let's talk about something real quick here. If you've watched ESPN the last few days, which I don't really watch ESPN all that much. I watch games on ESPN, but I don't watch the actual ESPN channel all that much. What I mean by that is commercial breaks, Sports Center, PTI. I don't even know what shows they have on ESPN anymore. I know they have Sports Center, but I don't really watch them all that much because I'm just watching games. I'm covering the Big 12 conference, and so I'm watching, on any given Saturday. If I'm not out, doing other work, which I'm listening to games, I'm watching games constantly. And so I'm flipping channels. I'm not spending time watching commercials. But this past weekend, I did have the opportunity, and I don't know if you'd call it an opportunity, but I did find myself watching ESPN. And what I noticed is there weren't a lot of commercials that were promoting the national championship. It didn't really feel like it was something that ESPN was really pushing. It made me think, why is that? And I think the obvious answer is that there's no SEC team. And let's just be honest. The SEC and ESPN are buddies. They're best friends. They make each other a ton of money. They give each other a ton of views and publicity. And so by not having a national championship game featuring an SEC school, it's not really in the best interest of ESPN to really promote it. Now, you might be saying, well, that doesn't really make sense because ESPN is broadcasting the game. Don't they want as many eyeballs as possible? That would be the short-term play. I don't think that that's what ESPN is looking at, though. They would rather get a slightly lower viewership on tonight's game and then have people kind of just sweep this game under the rug. You know, whether that's Indiana winning the third national title for the Big Ten in 3 years, or whether that's Miami winning the national championship. I don't think ESPN is overly excited about either one winning. Now, ESPN does have a deal with the ACC. But look at it sort of like a stock portfolio. If you have 80% of your stock in Tesla and you have 10% of it in United Airlines, well, you're going to really be paying attention to that Tesla stock. You're going to be watching futures. You're going to be reading up the news. You're going to be watching for trends because that is where your money is. That is where your focus is. So you're going to do everything in your power to make sure that you're setting yourself up the best way possible for your Tesla stock. Now, do you still care about your United Airlines? Sure. Do you hope it does good? Yeah, of course you do. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter all that much. If it tanks and goes completely south, okay, you've lost a little bit of your portfolio. If it skyrockets, great. You made a little bit of money. But again, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. And I feel like that's sort of what ESPN's doing here. If Miami wins, I would expect a lot more exposure after the game than what we've gotten before the game. I would expect them to, hold them up as the golden child of, oh, look, our TV partner, Miami, won the national championship. But again, it's not looking likely. It's looking like Indiana's going to win this game, which for ESPN is a nightmare. Not only is it a Big Ten team, it's one of the teams that is not supposed to be all that good. It is not Ohio State or Michigan, okay? When you are ESPN, you can kind of understand, okay, Ohio State or Michigan, they win the national championship, makes sense. They're big brands, they're blue bloods, whatever. And so, again, I think they're just kind of sweeping it under the rug. Okay, the game's going to happen. People are going to tune in. But let's just try to end the game, get past it. Let's move on to SEC basketball. Let's move on to baseball season. Let's start talking about SEC football again. I saw the rankings from On3. Once again, SEC is being boosted up like crazy. LSU's in the rankings. Why not? Surprised Arkansas is not at this point. Another day, another discussion. We'll talk about it at a different time. But let's end with this. Let's talk a little bit about some rankings. Let's go to basketball real quick. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'm going to put up some rankings from this past week. See if I can get a better screen here. All right, there we go. So this is from On3. This is from their Instagram, and it's showing the AP Top 25. I was going to show the AP Top 25 website, but there's a bunch of ads there. Couldn't actually get a good look on it. The Big 12 is kind of dominating. When I talk about dominating, I'm talking ranked number 1, number 6, number 9, number 12, and number 13 in the AP Top 25. That is 5 teams in the top 13. The Big 12 basketball is what SEC football thinks it is. Okay, and here's the difference. SEC football gets all these great rankings. They're promoted up, and they have all these, 5 teams in the top 10, but there's not really much of a sample size. In the non-conference, we play one Power 4 game. And so a lot of it's bias. A lot of it is personal opinion. In basketball, you get that sample size. You get 10, 15 non-conference games. 5 or 6 of those are massive games against other Power 4 opponents. And so when you see Arizona number 1, yeah, they're probably number 1. When you see BYU number 13, yeah, they're probably number 13. They lost by 2 to UConn. They beat Clemson, who's ranked number 18 now. They beat all these other great teams. They probably deserve it. Texas Tech number 12, Iowa State at number 9, Houston at number 6. This conference is looking really, really good right now. You also got Kansas here at number 19. Kansas appears that they're starting to figure things out. So you have 6 teams from the Big 12 in the AP Top 25, all of them in the AP Top 19, which is different from football. Okay, it's different. Remember, in football, we only have 134, 135 teams. College basketball, we have over 350. And so you're going to get more teams from the outside. They're going to get ranks. You know, we have UConn, we have Gonzaga, Miami of Ohio, who's undefeated, by the way. They're in there. St. Louis, they're in there. Okay, so you have 4 of the AP top 25 spots taken by these mid-tier conferences. That leaves 20, 21 spots for the Power 4. And the Big 12 has 6 of those. Again, all in the top 19. So Big 12 is looking great. Great weekend. Good games that happened this past weekend. I'm not going to get into all of them, but I think this conference is really setting up to have a really good March Madness this upcoming year. So this is going to be super fun. But let me know what you think. This is a bit of a shorter show. This is the first video that's going to be uploaded onto YouTube. We're going to have clips on Instagram, on X. It's going to be so much fun. I love being able to do this and have these conversations. So thank you so much for tuning in today. We're going to start having this daily show again. This studio is going to be decked out in Big 12 stuff, like I mentioned. I just haven't quite put it all up yet. So thanks for tuning in today. Catch you all next time. Bye.